So, that's not how I want to start this. Okay,
I
1, 2, 3. Since the Great Recession and the market crash in 2008, one thing that we have seen as real estate agents is that people are living in their homes longer than ever before. And one thing that we know too is that nowadays technology is playing a greater role in our transactions. And so we want to unpack. If you haven't been a seller in the last decade to 12 years since that market crash, we got some surprises for you. It's not like it used to be. There is a new normal, and we're going to break that down now. Welcome back. We're excited to have you here. We've got some interesting stuff to unpack here for specifically sellers in our market. And it's not just specific to Idaho, it's kind of sellers across the nation. But what we know here in North Idaho, we're going to unpack that. But first,
as always, like, comment, subscribe, turn on your notifications so that you never miss out on any of the information. And again, call, text with any questions. If you want to dive deeper into any of the topics, we are happy to chat with you. But first, heading into this, Lindsay's been in the business a little bit longer than I have. So I kind of wanted to pick your brain and explain to everybody how the typical market closing process, showing process kind of was, and then we can kind of compare it to how we work now.
Yes. So, And this started kind of in the early 2000s where everything started going online. But back in the day, especially if you've lived, and some people live in their properties for 20, 30 years. Back in the day, we used to have MLS books, and they were like phone books, and they were printed once a week. There was no automatic updates on new listings. They were printed once a week, and the buying and selling process was really cumbersome. And it centered around the agent and the brokerage holding all of the information. And these books would come out and you'd flip through it. You'd go to the city, you'd flip through. I mean, there was a little bit of rhyme or reason, but it was, this small little black and white, it looked like classified ads, small little black and white photo of the house with the price and a square footage, bedroom, bathroom, and about 100 characters for the description, and that was it. And then you would flip through this book and you'd find a list as a buyer, you'd find a list of homes that you'd want to go look at, and you'd sit down with your agent and they would start calling agents and brokerages to schedule appointments. Showing time didn't exist.
Yeah.
So the other thing, again, that being cumbersome as a seller, there was no way for you to get your property out in front of millions of eyes. It was whoever looked at that book. And, if in our community at that point in time, there may have been a handful, a few hundred agents, and it was the most active agents who were seeing this stuff and this inventory, and they controlled a lot of the market because they had a lot of the buyers too. Not so much that way anymore. So it went from having to go into a real estate office, having to print this book once a week, having to sit with an agent, flip through hundreds of pages of listing information all over North Idaho, and putting together these cumbersome schedules to go show houses. And as a seller, you held the key, or the office held the key. There was combo lock boxes. We'd have to give the combinations to the other agents. There was not the security that there is nowadays,
right,
too. And then the other thing too is once you get into a transaction, you're faxing papers back and forth, you're mailing things through the snail mail. You had to be in person for everything to happen in a real estate transaction. For the closing to happen, for the paperwork to get signed, for the contract to be negotiated, a lot of these things had to be in person. So they just weren't very efficient.
Yeah.
And so today we've got a lot of technology not just for us as agents and professionals, but the consumer has a lot of technology and access to technology that just makes this process so much different than it used to be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even just going back to the books, like you're classified essentially like catalog. Our MLS is updated by the minute, right?
Yes.
So we can go on every morning and look through your 24 hours, new listings within the last 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. We can go through and someone's looking for a home with a shop or wants a basement or, looking for a mother-in-law quarters. We have now ways to go in and physically filter the listings that will only show me listings that has a basement, right? So we're not sifting through hundreds or thousands potentially of inventory to find, the best option for our buyer clients.
Yeah,
right?
The relevant
inventory. So even just the MLS in itself is so, much more like revolutionary than sifting through just stacks of paper essentially. And then, I don't want to say it's lazy work, but it's just more efficient, right? It's much like we don't want to have your transaction take 3 months when it doesn't need to, right? When you can find something that you want to put an offer in within a week potentially,
Yeah.
So the MLS just in itself has been, I feel like, very helpful in streamlining just business transactions in general and just an easier process for you as a buyer, because it's like, maybe something wouldn't have been listed. I'm not sure what those looked like, but maybe there was a sorry,
she's too young.
Really cool. No. Maybe there's a piece of information that's missing, and then you physically take your client to go see this home, and you're like, well, there's no basement here. Why are we even here, right?
Yeah.
Just like wasting people's time when it's unnecessary.
Yeah. And the other thing too about our MLS nowadays, two things, I guess. We call it an IDX feed, and it feeds out to all of the real estate search engines, whether it's Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, EXPRealty.com, ColdwellBanker.com, all of these search sites. Our own websites have an IDX feed that filters out all of the inventory. So those feeds give that and open the door for the consumer to have access to that information. So buyers are savvier now than they've ever been. And most people are searching homes, months, if not years in advance, and just watching the market and waiting to see if. I saw a stat one time, and it was somewhere like 62% of buyers on Zillow also have to sell a home. So it's changed the way sellers have started the process too, in accessing that inventory online. But the other thing with the MLS is we're able to upload documents like CC&Rs, plat maps, easements, other recorded instruments that are important, driller reports,
utility reports.
Yes, all sorts of stuff that's important that the consumer have access to, and that make the listing and the transaction much more efficient and effective. And that wasn't a thing that existed in the MLS book days. There was no way to have that information available. And when it's right there and it's easily accessible, that is very important for both parties.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and even just, you can access, I'll get like all of our files now are online, and we can access all of those things through kind of our MLS forum as well as on the agent side. But, rather than postponing a vacation because you have to sign closing paperwork or you have to sign an addendum, like something, you're in negotiations and something comes back that you have to physically sign, you don't have to be present for that physically, right? We can email them to you, and it's just like a one click, sign, you're done. Closing paperwork, we know, is more of a time-consuming thing, but if you're on vacation, we can physically send a mobile notary to you to sign all of your documents and then have that FedEx back to the office here, have that process with the title company so that you don't have to kind of like put your life on hold or schedule things around signing papers, right?
Yes.
It's taken a lot of the waiting, the snail mail, physically mailing documents for people to sign, or having to make 10s to 20 trips to, to an office to sign something. you're able to literally have it in your email within like a minute and back to us as well. It's downloaded, sent up into your file.
Yes.
So everything has just basically been streamlined to the point where you don't have to, in a home buying process, kind of stop your normal life, right? To make sure that
and
you're
being a seller
physically
too.
available to sign all these things. And absolutely, as a seller, we already know, it's not ideal to have people in and out of your house all the time looking at things. That's a burden in itself. But then on, a second note of having to constantly be physically present to sign things, and then maybe you've already left town. Maybe you're started a job and you had to leave, and your home is here, in the trust of your agent to, negotiate all of these things and take care of the transaction. You don't need to be flying or driving back to where your home is to sign things. It's just really made everything a lot more convenient on both ends, whether you're a buyer or a seller.
Yes. So we have e-sign capabilities. So all paperwork can be done. You could sign your paperwork while you're laying in bed at night. Or while your kids are getting ready for bed at night. It doesn't have to be something that you've got to stop in the middle of the day or
take time out of work if it's like a working hour office sort of a thing. Take your lunch break. No one wants to take their lunch break to go run errands. Who wants to do that?
Yeah, and I think we live in this world now where we're so committed to work and the 9 to 5 and the grind. And then we've got families and activities and vacations. And it used to be, like Sammy said, put your whole life on hold to buy and sell real estate. And now we've made it to, technology has enabled us to balance that really well with just continuing to live our lives. And I think that's amazing. It's great for the consumer and it's great for us. And I actually think that, like with the e-sign stuff, it's secure. There's IP addresses attached to things.
Things are time-stamped when they're signed, whether it's our signature or the consumer signature. It's all timestamped. There's like a secondary file that's also uploaded for like legality purposes.
The authenticity.
It's very secure and safe, I guess.
Yes, it's a very safe way to transport documents back and forth that can often have sensitive information. And I remember one of the things that used to be so annoying, we would get like during the recession, we would do a lot of foreclosure properties and short sales, and you'd have these packages of paper that had like 50 pages in it, and you'd put it in the fax machine, and on page 15 or 20, a couple of them would get stuck together and they wouldn't go through, so the whole package wasn't received, or it would jam the fax up and you'd have to start it over and over again. We don't have that anymore. Our e-sign services and our document, like Form Simplicity is a program we use. It's so clean, it's easy to read. You don't get that issue when you fax stuff multiple times where all of a sudden it becomes very light and the material or the content is hard to read, so you don't know what you're signing. It's very clear. You put your signature in, you date everything, and it's very safe and secure with all of that information. So that is also a great thing. We were talking about too, just with like showing time and iBoxes, security
absolutely.
And ease of scheduling appointments for all parties. That's really streamlined things.
Showing time, and even as, on a buyer, you can request your own showing time appointments. It's like a whole online service where you're like, okay, well, I have 30 minutes on a Wednesday at 11. I can go see this house. Maybe for whatever reason, you text your agent and they're in a meeting or something. You can go on yourself and say, I'm going to go look at this. And we get the notification. We're like, okay, it's been accepted. We're going to make it happen. Great. As a seller, you can control what times you want people in and out of your home. Like if you, for instance, maybe you were like homeschooling one day a week, or when the kids were part-time back on, the online school, and then in-person school, maybe Tuesday, Thursday, they were at home and you didn't want a bunch of people coming in, or you got a sick kiddo. Like you can be like, you know what, today I'm going to block it out. You can go in there as the seller and put those preferences on so that, yes, you want as many people in and out as you can, just for, it's a numbers game essentially, but sometimes maybe you just like want a day
Yeah,
where it's a little
you still maintain
less
a little
crazy.
control.
You can have a little bit more control, and it's not just like a free-for-all, essentially.
Yeah.
You do have access up to like what times of day people can come in. Maybe you have a barbecue on a Saturday and you don't want to cancel it or something like that.
Absolutely.
And then with the lock boxes, we as agents have our own like secured PIN and account that we have to sign up and pay for to make sure that when we open up a lockbox, it knows who opened it, which agent it's tied to, when they opened it, when they put it back. It's much more secure. And then as the seller, your listing agent maybe is the one holding onto the key, they don't have to meet every single person to let them in. So you can get more traffic in and out of your house efficiently without having to rely on now 2 people's schedules working out to come see a showing, because the key, your buyer's agent can have access to the key.
Yes, definitely. So these are some of the ways that it's really changed being a seller. It's far more efficient, as you can see. It's far more secure with sensitive information, with access to the property. All of these things have become really important, and I think that it gives a little bit of it takes out a lot of middlemen too.
Right.
So things happen easier. There's not the game of telephone. There's not the, oh, well, I only had access to the home line, and so and so didn't answer, so we couldn't set that showing up. Things are texted a lot.
And it's automatic. It's like showing time is an automated system where it's like XYZ has requested a showing at this time. Send Y or N to confirm or deny, and that's it. It can be done in literally 10 seconds.
Less than 10 seconds. Why?
We're done. Let's do it.
The other thing, too, that technology has enabled on the part of the seller and the buyer is remote purchases.
Yeah.
There were times, and all of this has really been accelerated because of the pandemic, because we weren't able to do a lot of the face-to-face stuff.
In person, yeah.
These technologies really became essential. And then we realized, wow, that was really easy. And that was really efficient. And the feedback from our clients is that they enjoyed working with these technologies.
Yeah.
So one thing that became really prevalent in the past few years is people purchasing properties with video tours and purchasing them remotely. So as a seller, you may sell a property to a buyer who's never put foot on your property, and that is okay. A lot of agents, like what we'll do with clients who are out of town who don't have the ability to be here, is do video tours with them and giving them very personalized tours of the property where we're able to point out things, describe things, show them stuff, and they get just as much of a sense of what that property entails and what the neighborhood entails with these videos as they do if they were to physically go there themselves. So we're able to facilitate the sale of property without someone actually being here. And that's what, the advent of our phones and the internet on our phone has enabled. We do lots of Zoom meetings with people. We have clients who are selling properties who don't live here. They've purchased property for investment, or maybe they inherited it from a parent who passed away, or maybe they are buying a property for their kids or something like that, and they're not physically here. And we are able to facilitate these meetings and these important discussions still being face-to-face over Zoom. So technology has just really enabled our jobs to be more effective for our clients, and also to create transparency with consumers. And I think that's a good thing. So
absolutely.
Lots of changes. And again, if you find yourself one of those people that hasn't sold since before 2008, and you're curious about the process or how things have changed, and you want a realistic expectation, you want to talk to some agents like us that do this all the time and have this experience in the field with boots on the ground. We are happy to walk you through this. I think that's one of the things that we pride ourselves in, is we take this role as a real estate agent kind of like an advisory role,
Right.
where we want to set the expectation correctly. We want to learn about your needs and goals and timelines so that we can put a path forward for you or a plan forward for you that makes sense for your situation. And when people are remote and when technology is involved, it's really important to let people know how exactly that's going to work and what to expect. So like we mentioned, technology has really changed how the consumer sells their property and also how the buyers access the property. It's much more secure, it's much more efficient, a lot more transparency in this process. And so it's important to work with a local agent who does this stuff day in and day out and who knows what it's like to deploy these resources to help make this transaction efficient. So don't forget to call, text, email us. We're happy to answer any questions you guys might have. And we'll see you next week on our next video.
Bye.